Hey, love, you are listening to the No Boss of Me podcast, and I'm your host, Leanne Hanaway, money coach, wealth educator, and chartered professional accountant. This is a show that helps ambitious women grow and invest their money without shame, worry, or doubt so that they can live the life that they love. Every week, we will be discussing investing to build wealth, navigating personal finance as women, and talking with women entrepreneurs and change makers who are leaving their mark on our world. Without further ado, let's get into it. Welcome back to another episode of the No Boss of Me podcast. I am so thankful that you are joining me. And here we are. If you're listening to this early in January 2023, Happy New Year, many blessings, because it's been a while. It's been a while since I've been chatting with you. Last episode was in November 2022, and I've been taking a little bit of a break. Why? I actually suffered an injury. I tore my Achilles heel, a full tear of my Achilles heel, and I've been recovering ever since. They tell me total recovery will be about 6 to 7 months. I had surgery. It's been really interesting because it's been a period of forced rest, you know, like me really saying no to a lot of things and not doing a lot of things, which has been very interesting because then you figure out what's really kind of important to you. You do really find out what's really important to you. So I'm so grateful. If you are speaking to the universe, I would love if you would send me some vibes for a full recovery. Like I said, it's probably like 6 to 7 months to make a full recovery. I'm still in a boot and I'm hobbling a little bit. And I say a full or a thorough recovery as opposed to a speedy recovery. I don't want to speed through this. I'm enjoying the relaxation. I'm enjoying the rest. I'm enjoying the slowing down. So it's been a very interesting experience. So welcome back. Because on today's episode, I really want to talk to you about one of my favorite topics. I still have friends that make fun of me when they think about this thing that I've created or this word that I've embodied when it comes to building wealth. And we're going to talk about this word that starts with a B, that I honestly believe every woman needs to embrace if she wants to become wealthy. And this B word, it's really a source of a lot of contention. Some people say it's empowering, while other people say it can be quite restrictive and can keep you in a box. But like I said, if you want to be successful at building wealth, you have to embrace this B word. And this B word is budget. What did you think it was going to be? Come on, I want to keep these podcasts clean. So it is a budget. It is a budget. It needs to define your wealth building path. So we are going to start off with a definition for budget. I really like to define things in order to start off because we all want to be speaking from the same definition. And I'm going to use the definition that a budget is a plan that helps you manage your money. It really helps you figure how much money you have coming in. It makes you figure out how much money you want to spend and how much money you want to save. It's literally just a translation of a way to balance your income with your savings and your expenses. And principally, the thing you want it to do is help you and guide you on reaching your financial goals. The spending that you incorporate into your budget should really help you reach the wealth goals that you've decided to set for yourself. And in this time that we're in, 2023, it's early in the year, we're facing a lot of rising inflation, interest rates are increasing. So it's really essential that every one of us adapt our budget to reflect not only the season we are personally in, but the environment that we're currently in. And also, given that we started a new year, and a lot of people find this an excellent time to look at your numbers and to know the state of your finances so that you can set yourself up for a good year. Some folks love to pick a theme word. Some folks love to have resolutions. I'm sure there's some resolutions out there about getting your money in order. And a budget is a good way to start off that process of setting different intentions, particularly for your money. You really want to use this opportunity to look at your numbers, know the state of your finances, so you can really take off towards your goal. So, if you're anything like me, I probably don't have to convince you that a budget is necessary. A budget really helps you to manage your monthly expenses. It helps you to prepare for life's unpredictable events, and it can help you afford big expenses without going into unplanned debt. Because I do think you can go into planned debt, but a budget will really help you figure out how to afford big expenses without going into unplanned debt. But that's for people who are convinced that a budget might be necessary. For other people, you might be convinced that building a budget is a form of torture. No, I'm for real. You might also be convinced that it requires you to be really good at math, or it requires you, it really sets you up for not being able to spend your money on the things that you want. And I really want you to know, I honestly want you to know, I'm speaking truth to you, that that is absolutely not true. Budgets in and of themselves are not inherently restrictive. You don't have to have mastered calculus, and you really should, and I'm saying it again, you really should design your spending to include the things that you want. In fact, I really think you should have in your spending plan, your budget, the things that you love. If you don't have these things earmarked in your budget, you're just going to abandon the effort, and any goals that you set are not going to be achieved. And that's not what we want. So again, a budget, it just really means you will know where your money goes and you'll have greater control over your finances. And that's what we want. We want you to be boss of your money. This budget will really help you build wealth because it's through the translation of the budget, you'll be able to see your savings, you'll be able to see your income after expenses and turn that amount into income producing assets. And it becomes generative. You take that income to buy income producing assets. Your budget is the plan to show you how to make that happen. So we are going to spend the later part of this podcast really breaking down my 4 steps and how to build a budget. In most cases, these steps are probably very similar to other folks that you might be hearing from, because the steps in and of themselves are very straightforward and they don't really take that long to understand. The bigger journey that I really want to take you down is getting into the mindset, building a budget that you love and that you will stick with. Trust me, this is the harder part, even for a seasoned budget builder. The spirit to make a budget, it's not an even spirit. It's not something that you always want to do. But trust me, before you put pen to paper, really thinking about the mind shifts that you want to make in creating your budget is going to be so, so important. This will really help you develop the habit of really thinking about making a plan for your money and telling it where to go in the nicest way possible. Okay, so let's talk about mind shifts when it comes to money. And the first thing I want you to ask yourself is, do I need to build a better relationship with money before creating a budget? So think about when you hear the word money and reflect upon the first 3 words that come to mind. Money, write down the first 3 words that come to mind. Then I want you to consider why you think these words when you think about money. Because the truth is, our financial attitudes and our behaviors are significantly influenced by how our parents, how our caregivers, the environment that we grew up in, how those people felt about money and how they manage their money, especially how we grew up around it, can really impact us today. Your first step is to really interrogate whether you have a healthy relationship with money and to recognize the connections between how you feel about money and how they might show up when you're building your budget. In my experience, a lot of folks I've talked to, and even myself, there is a lot of trauma when it comes to money. We may have experienced a lack of money, or struggle to get money. We've seen maybe our parents and our loved ones have seen it's been objectively hard to make money, and we've internalized that, either thinking we're in the same situation or wanting the exact opposite, and everything in between. That relationship that you have with money is directly related to the relationship that you have with wealth. I'm going to say that again. And the relationship that you have with money is directly related to the relationship you will have with wealth. Money and wealth, although they are not the same thing, how we feel about money can also show up on how we feel about wealth. Because in our journey to create wealth, if we think we are struggling to create money, this can also be an obstacle in building wealth. And if you don't have that mindset where you can honestly say to yourself, I am wealthy, the budget you create will not help you to build wealth. While a budget might restrict your spending to the income that you have coming in, there's actually no restriction on how much money you can make. I'm going to say that again. There is no restriction on how much money you can make. So I really want you to take this time and spend some time evaluating how you feel about money. Find some quiet time, light a candle or two, get a blank piece of paper. I love unlined paper, but if you got lined paper, that works too. And ask yourself some questions about your relationship with money. This will be a really good exercise to interrogate, again, how you feel about money and how that will translate into how you set your budget for growth. If you're looking for some meditation prompts, you can grab my money guide where I have a list of 4 or 5 questions that you can start with, and you can grab it at leannehanaway.com/guide. The second thing I want you to think about in terms of mindset is really to reflect upon your wealth building goals and decide whether you want to reevaluate some of them. Again, these are ideas you want to seed in your head before you're creating this budget. Why I want you to take a look at your current wealth goals is because your budget needs to align with those particular goals. To create a budget, it pursues not only income, but your strategy for building assets, and in particular, income producing assets. I'm talking things like stocks, bonds, ETFs, real estate, entrepreneurship, anything where what you are purchasing produces income with little active effort on your part. The first time I remember sitting down to write a budget, I did it with the goal of buying a home. And in particular, this was a home for my mom. I looked at it as a forced savings plan for myself. But this meant that when I was constructing this budget, I needed to make sure that I could demonstrate stable income, that was in my plan, not only to build a down payment, but to eventually afford future mortgage payments, as well as property taxes, insurance, and maintenance, and all that stuff that comes with home ownership, Not just the capital appreciation, but the capital work to maintain that appreciation. And it also really meant that when I thought about the size of my emergency fund, it would need to increase for all the unexpected expenses that also come tied with home ownership. Whether it is like a new air conditioner, a new fridge, new appliances, sometimes they can sneak up on you and they're just more stuff that you need to buy. So that emergency fund gets a little bit bigger when you own a home versus when you rent. So I really want you to spend some time in this reevaluation of your wealth goals. Really think about what are your financial priorities. Maybe your wealth goal is you're trying to get out of debt. Maybe it is you want to be happy with how much income you're making, and you might want to invest in an area where you can make more income. Maybe with your present job, maybe with a side business, maybe with a promotion, or maybe with another job, all the different ways where you think, okay, I want to make more. What does that look like when I'm building out my budget? The other thing you might want to think about is, do you have enough savings? So subtracting expenses from income, is there enough savings to really make your wealth dreams come true? Or do you have a plan to make more, which could mean making more income or possibly reducing expenses? So if you discover that the budget, now that you put it together, it doesn't align up with your financial goals, this is where you're going to want to make necessary adjustments. So why not think about this as you were putting your budget together? Does it align with the wealth goals that you want to make? Okay, mindset shift number 3. I want you to think about setting up a realistic budget and a budget that will not be restrictive. Yes, the two can come together, you know? Because if you don't set up a realistic budget and you don't track your money because you know you're not spending it on the things in your budget, you're not going to have control over your finances. It's really your money's telling you where to go, not the other way around. One of the top reasons why folks don't really stick with their budget is because they built something that is not realistic. You might build something perfect in an Excel spreadsheet, but it's given not going to follow, right? It's given not getting started because it's not built to the way you actually live your life. Because money is so much more than numbers on a page. The other thing about crafting some of these perfect spreadsheets, these perfect Excel documentation of how money should be spent is that they really prescribe so many rules on the right way to do a budget. Overwhelmingly, there's really kind of 3 types of personal finance budgets that you can really build out there. One is called zero-based budgeting. This is where at the start of every month, you start from zero, hence the word zero-based budgeting. And you do this when it comes to your spending. You're basically going to allocate every single dollar of income that you have to spending or saving. And at the end of the month, you should have $0 left over. So you keep allocating every dollar that you earned in that month towards spending or saving. Now that's okay. That's kind of hard. Um, Another way to look at it is instead of really figuring out where every dollar is going, you can put them into different buckets, as opposed to cataloging every single dollar, again, buckets. And this kind of bucketing mechanism is often called the 50-30-20 rule. It's a rule that says you should spend up to 50% of your after-tax income on needs and obligations. So those are the things that you must have and must do. Again, very subjective kind of wording. And then when you look at the remaining 50%, it's split up between 20% to savings and repayment and another 30% to everything else that you might want. Again, I don't really know who created these rules saying that it was 20% for savings. It doesn't really make any sense. It doesn't really lend any personalness or personal circumstance into how your budget should flow. So again, highly, highly indicative that you just might not be following this budget. The last one is called reverse budgeting. And for me, I define reverse budgeting as simply a way to pay yourself first and then figuring out what to do with what's left over. Essentially, you earmark an amount for your savings and your investments first thing, and then you pay your bills and use what's left over for other basic spending needs. It's kind of like a bucketing thing, but prioritizing paying yourself first. All of these methods have their pros and cons. Some of them might work for you, some of them might not. And personally, if I were to recommend you starting out on a process, it would be to use the reverse budgeting methodology. This is the one I personally like because it requires you to pay yourself first. And those are magic words to me. If you are on the wealth building tip, that's probably why you're listening to this podcast. You know that you want to make investing and savings a priority before anything else. Prioritize future you as opposed to present you. Of course, this doesn't mean that you're going to sacrifice any basic needs. You got to be housed, you got to be fed, and you got to add something to your budget for the things that you love to do. And I say love specifically, as opposed to just like to do, like purchasing something that you saw on Instagram. I do this all the time. I love Instagram. Sometimes the images. And then you get it and it doesn't look anything at all what you bought, and it's fleeting. It's not what you want at all. So the discipline to really instead spend your money on things that you love. For me, Friday nights, Uber Eats. Gotta have that. Gotta have that. So in this season of your life, really ask yourself, what would work best for you? Do you naturally save money or spend it? Do you like having a lot of guidelines for your spending? That might be something that really excites you or something that you think you need at this present moment. Or do you dislike all the rules and kind of want more freedom in how you spend your money? You don't need a perfect solution at all. Getting started is way more important than becoming an expert. Half the things you just start and you will get better as you go. It's completely okay to make mistakes. We want to disabandon this perfectionist nature. I can't really even say that word. And really just start with initial budget and move on from there, So let's abandon the perfectionist type of mentality. I really want you to believe you are in control. A budget really doesn't mean foregoing pleasures in your life, because life is already hectic for that. We need to have these pleasures too. So really too much restriction is not going to be sustainable, and you're not going to be able to maintain your budget. So whether it's $50 or $500, make sure you make room in your spending on the things that bring you joy, high love value. Look at those areas where you want to keep in your budget, and then really adjust and cut back on the things that now you deem unnecessary. Because again, this is very personal. It's what you might want, not what somebody else might tell you you need. Now, the last area that I really want you to think about in prioritizing your mindset and building the budget is to prioritize your emergency fund, right? Every single one of us needs an emergency fund, basically a cash set of reserves that are kept aside in case of emergency. Someone is sick, maybe someone gets laid off, you have to make a visit to a relative on an emergency basis. You're going to have to dip into a source of cash. And as we enter this recessionary period, these situations might end up becoming true. People of color, women, were often laid off first and hired last. So an emergency fund will give you a measure of confidence in terms of a layoff or any other unexpected event. You're going to need in your budget, as you construct it, to understand what are your essential expenses. So this isn't the total of all your expenses. These are the expenses that you would need to have in an emergency situation. I'm thinking about a layoff in this particular instance. So could you do without certain expenses if you didn't have a job? Maybe you can cut out commuting costs. Maybe you could cut out drinks after work or food after work, depending whatever you do that you might not be doing when you're doing your job search. And now I'm saying this out loud. We're all remote workers, so maybe that amount becomes something else. But really think about what are your essential expenses by looking at what you can do without, as well as all the items that you might still continue to incur, but they be at a lesser frequency or a lesser amount. So when you think about that emergency fund, keep that emergency fund in cash, right? You're going to want that separate from your day-to-day checking account. You're going to want to make sure you can have access to that funds quickly. Ensure, for example, instead of an interbank transfer, you can get an electronic fund transfer. And if you ever end up in a situation where you do need to use your emergency funds, yay, that's what they're for. When you look to construct your budget, you now allocate income to replenishing that emergency fund account. Now, some have said, well, if you have a line of credit can function like an emergency fund account. And I want to get us away from this thinking. Your line of credit should really be a last resort financial resource. It's not something that you want to go to first. You're going to want to have some cash reserves saved up. One of the reasons is because we are in this high inflationary environment and most line of credits are variable interest rate, which means that if we're in a recession, interest rates go up, you get laid off, the amount that you draw from your line of credit is actually going to cost you a lot more. So you'd rather use cash in that instance than use your line of credit. Plus, hopefully, that emergency fund, if you don't need to use it, it's going to be at a higher interest rate because interest rates have gone up. And where we're sitting in 2023, we could probably expect at least one more increase in the Bank of Canada benchmark interest rates. Another thing about line of credits is that the banks that lend it to you, at their discretion, they can increase your interest rate. They can lower your borrowing limit, which could wreak havoc on your credit score. They can also ask you to repay the outstanding balance at any time. And the chances of them asking you that, although they're probably still unlikely depending on who you bank with, you never know, it is higher. It is higher in a recession than it would be in any other time. So again, this is just really to say, let's create an emergency fund with cash and really build that up. Because if nothing else, it will really get you into the habit of savings and creating savings within your budget. And saving is 100% a precursor to investing. And that's why you're here. So where are we? We talked about your mindset shifts being build a better relationship with money, reflect and reevaluate your wealth goals, set out to make a realistic but not restrictive budget, and prioritize your emergency fund when building your budget. 4 ways to really think about how you want to think about your budget before you get started. Okay, all right, you're hanging in there because now we're going to talk about the 4 quick and easy steps to actually now construct your budget. Trust me, the reflection time to really think about how you want to craft your budget is probably going to be the bulk of the effort. This is really more of a process of how you put your budget together. 4 quick and easy steps. Now, again, this is completely personal, so it's going to be different for every single person. But what I'm going to want you to do is number 1, add up your total income. So look at all your sources of income, whether it's your paycheck, whether it's tips, you got a side business, you got investment income. I want you to document that for the month. What is your typical monthly amount? Now, if your income is variable, you might want to take an average of 3 months in order to figure out what that regular occurring monthly amount will be. Important thing here is actual money that you receive, not imaginary, not I hope to, not eventually, but put the actual number down on the page. You're going to want to have that mantra when it comes to spending too. No hiding things from yourself, okay? That's the hard part, trust me. Because in number 2, before getting to the point where you're going to come up with that spending plan, I want you to think about what your pay yourself goals are. Do you want to save money? How much money do you want to save? Do you want to pay off debt? Obviously, if you have minimum payments to make, those are going to be in there, but is there anything extra that you want to pay off? Do you want to start investing? What number is a monthly number that you want to put in there? Perhaps saving for a big purchase. Those are the numbers that you're going to want to put in your pay your first goals. You're also going to want to put in the things that you love. Remember how I said I love Uber Eats on Friday nights, ordering in. I love Thai, I love pizza, I love Italian. You want to also put that into your budget. How much do you spend on that every month? And put that into your pay yourself goals. We're paying ourselves first in time, in love, and in money. That's how it shows up. Now, remember, these can adjust over time. So put something in there that makes the most amount of sense for you. And if you're deliberating in terms of goals, put the most pressing goals first. So if you have high interest debt, let's put that in there. And of course, if you don't have an emergency fund, put that in there as well too. You could balance both creating an emergency fund with paying high interest debt off. Now you're going to want to subtract the total of your pay first goals from your income. The rest is going to be allocated to your spending plan amount. Okay, so number 3, more than halfway there, make a spending plan. And in this spending plan, you are going to separate what you need to spend on your needs versus your wants. Your needs versus your wants. Your needs are expenses that you have to pay every month, right? Rent, mortgage, insurance, taxes, childcare, cell phone bill, all the things that are you must have in order for your life to operate. Your mandatory haves, your must haves. Those go into your needs. Secondly, you're going to want to categorize your wants. Anything that you have that comes out in automatic payments, whether you put it on a credit card, whether you pay in cash, you're going to want to categorize all these types of real expenses. They could include automatic payments. They could include subscriptions. They could be a mix of fixed payments as well as variable payments. The important thing is to really just get them down on the page and make sure that you've captured them all. Over time, you can get more assured of the number, but just to classify them, make sure they're on the page. You know that you have this particular expense. You want to put it on the page. And again, you want this to be real expenses and not imaginary expenses. Not, I will do this later on in the month. No, if you spend your money on Netflix this month, put it on there. If you have a Spotify subscription, put it on there, and evaluate it later. Just categorize all the amounts. Okay, so now you got your income, you got your total of your pay yourself goals amount, and now you have your total spending plan amount. You're going to want to subtract from your income your total pay yourself goals as well as your total spending amount. Now, hopefully you still have a positive number or a number that is close to zero. Because in step 4, you're going to want to consider where you adjust your expenses where necessary, particularly if it is negative. Obviously, if it's 0 or even a little bit more positive, you also might want to look at different ways you want to adjust it. But immediately, if you're looking at it and the amount is negative, you're going to want to readjust some of your expenses. I would suggest that you take an attempt and look at some of your wants and see if there's any kind of ways to move things there. So take a look at your spending plan and see where you're spending items. If there's anything that you can do there. The other alternative is, of course, the alternative that I like better is finding a way that you can earn more income. Looking at ways where you can get a promotion, you can take on better hours, you can start a side business. Different ways where you can monetize some of the items that you're doing. So instead of cutting expenses, you can look at a way to increase income. But honestly, it could probably be a combination of the two activities. What's important here is that having a flexible budget where you've documented anything will help you avoid overspending. It's a process, and it's something that is going to evolve over time. What I'm going to encourage you to really do is just get started. I think that's the most important thing. So that's it. Your 4 steps to building your budget: add up all your income, set your pay yourself first goals, make a spending plan that separates your expenses between needs and wants. And once taking a look at the total left, adjust your expenses where necessary, or your income as well where necessary. So if you want to get a template, I have a template for you on building a budget inside my masterclass on investing. And you can sign up at leannehanaway.com/masterclass. You will get that template on how to build this reverse budgeting template to create a budget for the life you love. I am so glad that you've come along on this journey and we've looked at budgeting. I honestly do believe that budgeting is a form of self-care. It's a way of putting yourself first and a way of really thinking about making a habit and dedicating time to building your wealth goals. Trust me, the more you do it, the more you practice it, the easier it becomes. This has been another episode of the No Boss of Me podcast. I'm Leanne Hanaway, money coach, wealth educator, and chartered professional accountant. If you have feedback on today's episode, don't forget to rate us and review us wherever you get your podcast. You can also DM us on Instagram at nobossofme. We'd love to hear from you. Please join us again next time for more on investing to build wealth, navigating personal finance, and talking to women entrepreneurs who are changing our world with confidence. Thanks for listening.